and welcome to Tales from the Schiz, where I tell you a story about my life with schizoaffective disorder and sometimes make you laugh in the process. But don't romanticize it, it still sucks a lot. Today's tale isn't one you'd really laugh at per se, but it is interesting. It has to do with a weird time that my cognitive symptoms got the best of me. And I think these stories are important to tell too. So without further ado, let's get into it. Years ago, all the way back in 2020, I was job hunting, and I wasn't always trying to get a job in a lab. I tried seasonal retail first, and no one got back to me. I tried being an EMT, as I had the certification, but I couldn't find anything better than $12 an hour with no benefits. So I landed on Trader Joe's, a grocery store that treats their employees like actual people. My dad knew someone that worked there, so I was able to apply and be noticed. So the day of the interview came that I was so lucky to have, and they led me up to an attic. Like, we had to go up a ladder to get into an attic. There were pipes everywhere, and they led me to a plastic table with metal chairs. It was an interesting place to have an interview, but I really wanted this job, so I dismissed it and moved on. And so they started asking questions, and I answered confidently. It started off great, but then my memories started getting the best of me. And if you don't know, schizoaffective disorder, the disorder that I do have, is associated with problems in attention concentration and memory, even if these things aren't part of the DSM criteria for the disorder. For me personally, it comes across as a lot of issues with verbal memory and auditory processing. And so, in this interview, that I wanted to do well in so badly, I started forgetting not only the questions, but my answers as I was answering them. Let me be a little clearer with this, with what was going on. They would ask me a question, and I would hear it. I would start answering, and then I would forget the question while I was still talking. Then forget what I already said. So I was left trying to finish a forgotten sentence to a forgotten question. It was horrible, if I'm being honest with you. And it didn't stop. It actually happened multiple times for the rest of the entire interview. To say they looked perplexed when it was happening is putting it mildly. And I hid it as best as I could. But as you can guess, that didn't exactly work, especially when it continued. And continued, and continued. They got more and more confused, and I got more and more confused. All the while I was panicking internally because this was really scary for me. Yeah, I was scared while this was happening, and I had to hide that too. Hide my fear. I knew I wasn't making sense. I knew I was bombing the interview, and I knew I wouldn't get the job, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I finished the interview and tried not to think too hard about it while I drove home. I felt awful. As expected, I got a call a few days later telling me that I didn't get the job, which was still a crushing blow at the time, because Trader Joe's was the only company that had gotten back to me at that point in my job search. But that pain was short-lived because my now boss actually emailed me the day after the rejection asking me for references for the lab position that I now have. Because while the Trader Joe's interview was a train wreck, I am better off now. Nearly 5 years at the lab, and the interview for it went great. I didn't forget any questions, which goes to show that my cognitive symptoms are not a constant thing. They are just frustrating and sometimes extremely detrimental when they happen. And that's Tales from the Schiz. My question to you is this: do you also have cognitive symptoms that mess with your life? If so, can you describe your experience in the comment section down below? I'd love to hear your thoughts and see what other people deal with when it comes to this kind of thing. And of course, if you want more stories like this, check out the Tales from the Schiz playlist right over here. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me and making the uncomfortable comfortable. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.